All right, everybody, we'll get started with the work session this evening. It's January 2026, 6:30 p.m. First item we've got on the agenda for the work session this evening is the 2025 Municipal Utilities Rate and Fee Study, Utility Bill Impact Review, Water and Wastewater Impact Fees. We've got Deputy Director of Public Works, Megan Smith, as well as Todd Cristiano from Raftelis presenting for us this evening.
I want to first test the microphone to see how loud we have to speak using this one. We really do have to speak right into it, so we'll just trade it back and forth, Mr. Cristiano. Good evening, Board of Trustees. Again, Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works. I do want to highlight that we also have Nick David, Finance Director, with us this evening, as he's been along for this ride this year for the whole trip. As you have in your packet, this evening is kind of the second half to a two-parter of presenting findings and outcomes of the 2025 Municipal Utilities Rate and Fee Study. On December 16th, we were before you for another work session where we really dove into the outcomes. I know our resident advisory group presented their recommendations for rate structure changes at that time. Raftelis presented some of the outcomes using that rate structure as well as some other options. We got some feedback from the Board of Trustees at that time to please review a couple of things. There was a request to develop one additional water rate alternative to consider. And then there was also a request to develop a full set of annual example combined utility bill impacts for the different customer classes we have across several user profiles. So you have two main things in your packet this evening, which one is a very dense, data-filled, lots of numbers memo that was developed by Raftelis to review both the additional water rate alternative. So that's kind of embedded in there. So now there's essentially three water rate structure alternatives that are considered in the layout of those tables. And then in summary, in the body of the memo are some annual summaries, numbers across the different user profiles and customer classes. And then in the appendices are a more detailed set of monthly users, so a full annual usage profile, so you can kind of see the impact on a monthly basis, why it is that sometimes it looks like by instinct you might think that one of the rate alternatives might result in a different kind of annual impact. And what you can see is that in some cases there's, which is, I think, to Trustee Daly and I believe Mayor Shosi had actually requested this as well. There can be maybe a reduction in a water bill in the summer months, but there's an increase in some of the winter months. And so as a net annual impact, there's maybe a little more negligible than we might have thought. So that is in your packet in detail. And we'd really like to get a little bit of feedback, provide an opportunity to ask questions on that memo. Like I said, I know is a dense material. But we'd like to get some feedback from you on those three water rate alternatives. That was kind of the one outstanding piece for utility rates, as we are looking to bring forward in February formal utility rates and fees for adoption. And then the next conversation we'll have will be diving into impact fees. But to start, I'd really like to see if there's any feedback or questions based on the memo that was in your packet.
Yeah, we'll kick it off with questions from the board. Trustee Cannon.
Questions? Okay.
Trustee Wiggin.
I do have one quick question. I was noticing in there that when you had the prices per month, that July and August was quite a bit lower than I would have suspected when it was looking at the overall cost there. And I was just, because I know I looked at my September bill and it was in the 300s at that point, and I think you had it in the low to mid 200s at that point. And my usage that month was 17,000.
So if I scroll down to,
I think that page 22 maybe,
so I'm looking at page 21 in the packet. Actually, it'd be probably closer to page 22 or even on 23. So if you're to look at a usage profile on page 22 or 23, you can see actually on 23, you can see that there is they have for this usage profile in the month of August, it was that's modeling 17,000 gallons in a month. And it does show under existing rates, all the existing utility rates that bill would be close to $375. Does that kind of
Okay.
align with what you were seeing?
That would have been about right. Yeah.
Okay.
What page was that on?
The packet page is 23 of 46.
Okay.
That was there in that appendix of being able to kind of break apart and see the monthly usage profile.
Okay. Sounds good.
Perfect.
Trustee Davy? Okay. I also have no questions as far as the information goes.
Okay, good. That means it was presented in an understandable way. I'm glad for that. Thank you, Elise. Is Elise on the call, actually, Hannah? Okay. Hi, Elise. Sorry about that. Just so you know, Elise Ritchie, whom you all have met in the past, has dialed in from home, and she'll probably work some spreadsheet magic if there's questions that need to get sort of reviewed in the models themselves, is why she is handily available for us. At that point, if you have broader questions or obviously discussion, because we would like to have feedback so we know a direction that we'll come back to you with in February. We'll come with 2 presentations in February is the current plan.
Direction from the board, Trustee Cannon?
Yeah, I did have one thing that I just kind of trying to find it right now. Page 15, about the commercial. Under 2-inch average user. You know, I was looking at the drainage proposal of $11.56 when the other 2 existing rate is 111 versus the proposed structure of 138, and this fell under. So is that a typo?
Wondering.
Because 1156,
Yeah.
we can't do a drainage that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that must be coming from residential. Yeah.
Good catch. Thank you.
It's actually $138.72.
138 and what?
138.72.
Yeah, so it should be exactly the same as the drainage that's listed above. Yeah. That makes sense.
Trustee Cannon, any additional direction as far as what model, as far as the advisory group rates, or any additional feedback as far as those as that goes?
Well, when I was going through this, I was comparing, existing rates, proposed structure, and the RAG structure, and then, Brian, your questions, and then it had basically your structure or your requested structure to look at. Primarily, I trust the work that the RAG did. They were very active for quite a long time, put a lot of work into this whole project, but when I start looking through all these different user structures and so forth like that, I'm not seeing a significant difference. It's not a drastic difference between maybe what you requested versus the proposed structure versus what the RAG group was doing. I did see that the RAG group tended to be a little higher across all the user groups there. And I understand what their purpose was of meeting, so to make sure that people capture true cost instead of, one group supplementing others and so forth. That being said, for example, on table 2 on page 6, the difference between the recommended versus the RAG recommended versus the Mayor Pro Tem motion request, those amounts are, $9 or $10 within each other of what those would be on a monthly basis. And then the last comment I have on that, like I said, I do support the RAG recommendation. The last comment that I have in this, since this is just a work session, when it does come back to us in February, I would almost kind of like to see what each one of those three structures, the proposed, the reg proposed, and also what your requested proposal would be based on total consumption of all users within each category. So that total figure, you know, if we've got 4,000 people that are on, you know, this one structure, and so understanding what that increase would be, I also want to understand what the impact is going to be on the cost and ability to meet our operation cost and maintenance cost, O&M cost, basically, in all of these different categories for drainage, sewer, and also for water. I remember the December meeting, there was some questions about a proposal to, well, we could hold off on doing the rate increase for a time, which I didn't think was a good idea, but when it does come up next time for more of a vote, I would love to see more of a comprehensive picture of what the total impact on our water, sewer, drainage would be for all users. What's that dollar amount look like in all three proposals?
Would that be based on
Trustee-
consumption from last year or what?
You know, based on consumption by last year. We might see trends going down on usage because people are starting to become a little more water wise, especially residential.
Trustee Cannon, I just want to see if I can clarify your question here. You're asking for a percentage of users of the total users in town, a estimated percentage of users that would see an increase versus a decrease, or
Did not say that at all. What I
Oh.
wanted to do was, okay, we've got a cost to our water system. And that cost is covered by all water users, residential and commercial, multifamily, high use, low use, all these people. And that cost is based on covering our operating cost and also some of the capital cost, and I think some of the debt cost and so forth with the water system. So under these proposals, what I would like to see is, okay, if you use just 2025 figures, you know, what is that total? What's that impact going to be to our water fund? You know, are we going to be short? Are we going to be, you know, I don't like making decisions based on small snapshots.
So when we were here in December, part of that presentation was we reviewed the 5-year financial plans for all 3 funds. And all rates that are being proposed, so any rate structure that's under the proposed categories in the set of information that you have in this memo, all would yield the same revenue to those funds. Or we wouldn't, so they are all for the water fund, a revenue neutral scenario. So they're meeting the revenue goals that we have for the water fund. They're just going to capture those funds in a different way.
Including what
Correct. Yes.
basin,
Yes.
then that's fine.
Okay.
So that, I think that should, based on the detailed data that's in the memo attached, if you were to go back then and look at the financial plans that were presented in the packet material at the December work session, these rate structures would all meet the goals set by that financial plan.
That's all.
Perfect.
But I did not go back to presentation back in December.
Well, when we do the next packet, we can put a link to that packet.
Okay.
We'll add that in there so you have a quick reference to it.
Yeah, I don't want to make.
Oh,
No,
no,
that's easy.
That's the easy part.
Yeah.
That's all my comments.
understood? Thank you, Trustee Gannon. I just wanted to be clear. So it does sound like you are recommending the advisory group model at this time,
Okay.
obviously with further information to come. Excellent. Sounds great. Trustee Wiegand.
And that's what you're looking for me. I am in favor of the rate group 2. They put in a lot of work and I think it's great having the residents put in their input and we need to go off of that too. So I'm all for the rate group.
Understood. Trustee Gailey.
I really like how that information is displayed and it gives me exactly what I was looking for when it comes to really understanding the impact to different groups overall, given that people can, you know, normalize their bills over the year. It really matters to me what the actual year expenses are. So whether there's peaks and valleys based on irrigation or not, it gives you a good idea of what overall the expenses will be for each of those uses.
Amen.
There is 1 month based on RAG that saves money. And it's for a very specific user, it's low water users. And the expectation is it would save them $2. For every other group, it's significantly higher for all of those type of users. Every group of the RAG recommendation is higher for what we would expect the average user to use. So based on that, and I know the trouble is the wrong word. The effort necessary in order to change a bill rate structure and to help communicate that and have people understand it is traumatizing to our utility users. And we're not talking about a minor change, we are talking about like whether or not essential use is included or not. So it is a pretty significant change. It really changes completely how people would expect to calculate their bills based on their usage. It would be confusing. It would be frustrating. And there is only one group of users that is a minor percentage of our overall bills that could expect to save $2 versus the benefit of the existing and proposed structure where it doesn't see any significant changes. There's really not a huge swing for either way. So if there was a huge swing and we have one group of users where they have a completely different bill than expected, and it's based off the values as expected from RAG, which make complete sense to me. There's no arguing about it. It makes sense to me. But the point is that it doesn't really make a significant difference for the majority of our users. Well, really hardly anybody. So is the effort worth it to be confusing and frustrating and to make a change again for that small group that might see a slight relief? I have a hard time rationalizing that when it will cause frustration and confusion across the board, when really the focus should be on conserving water, understanding how your bill works, and making sure that you are doing the best for your household to reduce your usage, which was ultimately what's going to save everyone. So based on that, my recommendation is the proposed rates for all the residential. We're talking about residential a lot because that's the majority of our users, and that's really the most impactful when it comes to revenue. But what I do want to draw attention to is the very significant changes when it comes to commercial based off of the thing I have to really call attention to is a multi-unit. The most affordable housing that we have in our community sees the most increase under the RAG proposed. So the folks that are really working hard for affordability or are in the situation in which they're living in a multifamily environment for affordability, we're increasing their bill the most under the RAG recommendations, which again, there's a fairness associated with it, with, you know, the values associated with the RAG recommendation. But in my mind right now, this is not the time to put that pressure on those users. This is not the time to do that. So they're the most increase that I'm seeing, like for a small user seen on those multi-unit families. But I guess the only thing that I would really want to call attention to is the significant change it will be just by changing the commercial concerns based off of the, what's the right words? Low strength, medium strength, and high strength. The proposed rates, you know, that's a really significant change for some of these users that require a lot of treatment. And again, this is fair. This makes sense. It's putting the most stress onto our systems. It is requiring the most work. So it makes sense. So I'd also recommend those proposed changes, but I do want us to acknowledge that is a significant change in bills for some of our commercial users. So I have to draw attention to that and just make sure that we're going to follow up and probably maybe discuss that further. Again, I'm not saying go against the proposed rates because I understand why it's necessary, but we just need to come to terms with and understanding the impact on those commercial users. Talking about, and there's very few of them, right, that would fall under these categories. I'd like to have some feedback from those specific users so that they understand and have really good preparation, knowing that their rates are gonna be changing. That, and I know what we will, I mean, we work with these customers, but we just need to make sure that they understand what's happening, when it's gonna be effective. And just do those changes in in a meaningful way that's acknowledges the pain. So I just want us to be really cautious about those changes. So as far as I'm concerned, I think we should pursue all the proposed rates. It hits our most affordable families with the RAG right now, just based on the revenues that we need are the similar. The changes right now to those are hitting our most affordable households the worst. And the benefits are only for a very small group of users. But overall, it's the most, the proposed rates are the most even killed minor changes to bills, and it doesn't require any effort or resources to really change your bill structure. I don't think this is the year to take those. I think we should take that into consideration in the future, but I don't think this is the time to take right now.
Thank you for that feedback, Trustee Daly. Well, let's see, as far as my comments go, and thank you guys for putting these. Oh,
Can I
Ms. Wright.
clarify one thing, just based on the language that Trustee Daly used, when you're saying the proposed structure, so are you proposing, or your recommendation is to stay with the existing water rate structure? And then the proposed changes for sewer and drainage? As opposed to,
Yes, so water, it's using the existing.
okay,
But then it has the proposed changes.
for sewer and drainage,
Yeah, so
perfect,
everything labeled.
okay.
For the full contract, right? It says 2025 rates, proposed structure, and
Yep.
then water RAG recommendation with the sewer.
Okay.
So minus the proposed structures overall. This section. Yeah.
Great.
So.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Daly. Thank you, Ms. Smith. And thank you guys again for putting these numbers together, and certainly the advisory group as far as all the work that they put into this. I do share some of Trustee Daly's concerns, certainly when it comes to the commercial users, especially with this upcoming year, as far as the Cleveland project goes and that sort of thing. I think some of those folks are going to get hit awfully hard this year, but I do think that we certainly need to move to a low, high strength type situation. I think that's the right direction for us to go. But I do want us to be cognizant of the impact that some of those businesses are going to feel this year. I also do want to point out, and I think my biggest concern comes from page 6 and page 7 in the packet, which is our average non-potable users using 47,000 gallons a year annually, and our average potable irrigation users of 86,000 gallons annually. So anything really between those two numbers, 47 to 86. Obviously, everyone is going to see a sewer rate increase this year between $4 to $8 roughly. But my big concern, I think, is the users, again, that are being impacted by it, basically an additional $9, $10 a month on top of that. I did speak to 2 residents that are caretakers for disabled folks in their homes and never go under 3,000 gallons. And those folks are going to be hit, I think, pretty hard. You know, $10 a month can be fairly significant for some folks. And I feel like those 2 user classes, and especially, again, anything really between 47 up to 86 is, in my opinion, going to be disproportionately affected than what we would see from the low users, right? That group of folks that's going to see about a $2 decrease a month. So knowing that we can meet revenue requirements based off the suggestions I had made last meeting, I would still stand by that recommendation to leave the structure the same and to increase that third tier from 20 to 35,000 gallons as was my request for the last meeting. So that's my feedback. Any other discussion as far as that goes?
I do have a question. The previous rate structure that we were looking at, we were projecting a 5% increase for each year. Is that right?
I think it was 3%.
No, think it was 5.
From
Oh,
the,
the previous, yes, you're correct.
Right,
Yes,
right.
that's correct.
correct.
And this right here on each one of these is, I'm looking at 4 to 5% on
So
this.
let's separate out the fact that we are looking at a combined utility bill on these numbers.
Yeah,
So our previous,
I'm looking at the total bill, looking at all that stuff together.
right. So that gets confusing because we are not proposing any rate revenue increase to the water fund in 2026 at all.
Correct.
We don't require a rate revenue increase. We do require a rate revenue increase in the wastewater fund, the sewer fund, and the storm drainage fund is what we're recommending. As a matter of fact, in the financial plan that was presented at in December, it showed 0 rate revenue increase required for 2026. Elise, I'm not sure if you can recall that right off the top of your head, if we were holding steady into 27 and then with CPI. So
Believe so for 2 years.
I believe it was holding steady for 2 years and no more rate revenue questions. Yes, 0% for 27 as well.
Correct.
And then not seeing a rate revenue increase need, so an actual rate increase, but that gets difficult. Yeah. And then 3% after that. That gets difficult to parse that out though, if we would be changing rate structures, that would end up resulting in a bill increase, a water bill increase for most customers. And it's difficult to explain that, no, you didn't have a rate increase, the rate structure changed, and so you were paying more. But as a whole, the water fund is not collecting any more money. But that is a policy decision for sure. All of the structures that are presented to you this evening, the existing rate structure, the RAG recommended rate structure, and then also the additional rate structure that was developed from January or from last month's meeting, all meet our revenue requirements for the water fund. The wastewater fund is being proposed, at least was it 18% for 2026? And then the storm drainage fund this sounds like a really scary number. It is a 25% increase. That's $1.25.
Right, very minimum.
But it's still a significant increase. So across that percentage increase as a whole, and we didn't put those percentage numbers on those tables, and we could have, but so it will vary for every user in town. It will depend on how much water you use and how much wastewater you have. So yes, it's 18% wastewater rate increase, 25% storm drainage rate increase, and a 0% water rate revenue increase is what is proposed currently. Did that just muddy the waters or simplify?
This really proves that we can't speak from the perspective, when we're looking at a whole bill like this, and this is, my recommendation that we're looking at a whole bill, because
Yeah.
when people get their bill, they're not saying, oh, my water rate and this rate and this rate, and they're looking at percentages on either one. What they care about is what comes out of their wallet,
Correct.
right? So we can't say it's a percentage change. Well, for one thing, that math doesn't math that way. So it's not accurate to say there's an overall percentage change associated with their bills, right? So it might look like a 3% change, but that's overall, but it's distributed across the things. So I think what's really important too, maybe this is a messaging thing to consider, is we can't, especially based on whatever recommendations we're doing, if the structure changes whatsoever, or the percentages across the different funds are different, we can't speak in your bill is changing by a percentage. That's just not an accurate math statement. So I think what we need to do is, I don't know, talk about in dollars. Like our average user might see a $6 increase per month for the duration of the entire year. Like that kind of thing, because we can't say percentages anymore. It just, if we're looking at it from a whole bill standpoint, which we should, because that's what people see. They can't say, oh, the town of whatever is increasing their rates by 30%, which we are seeing in Northern Colorado. Absolutely, we're seeing that. But that's not comparable to what we're doing whatsoever. So, and we're talking about a water rate increase of potentially 0% if we keep the same proposed rates. And if anything, I think that's a great news story, absolutely, to say, hey, we're improving, like, there's obviously revenue changes in other funds. But we have no intention of raising our water rates this year. I think that's a great message to be able to do, and your overall bill is gonna change, like, slightly. And our average user would expect $6 more per month, and that's increasing the support for sewer and storm.
Right.
So I hope that from our perspective and from the board and like messaging from the town, that we exclude percentage changes altogether, because it just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense anymore.
I look at everything in percentages, but, and again, I think it's the messaging we have to have out there because our water rates are not going up. It's the other part. It is gonna be a percentage increase,
Yeah.
no matter what you look at it, but it's different how you have to look at it, of course.
Somebody might see a 1% overall, another person might see a 5% overall, but it's really based on your usage. And all we can really speak to is like our average users for potable might see this, our average users for non-pot might see this. And then, but really, hey, friends, it's up to you. Like, if you're conserving water, you're gonna see a decrease. That's how it works. The less water you use, the less you pay, right? So that's where the real savings is. So I really hope our messaging is matching that, and like the words from us match that as well.
And with the saving, okay. With the water usage, if the water usage goes down, is that of a client? Okay, would that decrease the, oh shoot, how would I want to say that? You know, the sewer and the drain and all that type of stuff. I mean, the percentages are not going to go down. It's still going to be the same percentage increase on the other ones. So-
Correct.
Right, okay.
Well, I mean, sewer is based off of your usage in winter months.
Well,
So if you're
Right, it's a
reducing your
base, it's a base rate, what we're gonna have that we're increasing, right?
There's a per 1,000 gallon charge in our wastewater bill as well. There's a base rate and then plus a per 1,000 gallon for every 1,000 gallons. And
Okay.
it is based on your winter quarter
Yeah.
average, which is in Wellington, we use January, February, March
Right.
of your water usage is
Mhm.
what is reset in April as your wastewater bill.
And that particular part of the bill is gonna be consistent.
And then
all
it
the
stays
way.
fixed through the year for residential. Commercial is treated a little bit different.
Okay,
Rebecca, you made a good point. Appreciate your comments there about the proposed rate being, keeping water where it
we're
is.
saying,
And the messaging is important.
It is
Great.
really.
Yeah.
It's perspective is half of it, and like encouragement, right? So if people are focused on being frustrated with their water bills versus like a consolidated, like cooperative focus on let's use less water. I mean, there's a different motivations on both, right? And one of them is being productive than the other.
Well,
Absolutely.
my messaging when I was not talking with people is, been mainly centered around how we're negotiating water, you call it that, improvement and so forth. But a lot of part of my message is about what the town has been offering, to help keep people's, water bills manageable to a certain degree, like equal payments on there, the irrigation audits and so forth, which are no cost, plus other programs, and of course efficiency as well. And I've been an advocate of getting more conservation measures put in place from a policy standpoint, to help reduce the amount of water people consume.
Right.
Especially for people like in my subdivision where we're on potable irrigation. But I don't get the big spikes anymore in the summertime because it all evened out to like, I think it's like $219 a month, which is manageable for us.
you do budget billing?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it all depends on the weather.
And I do,
Yeah.
and we still got only 40 some odd houses on that equal billing.
Nick?
I can tell you.
It's 38 the last time I.
Yeah,
heard that.
38 last time.
I need to.
So that should be annual. So maybe that's annualized and these didn't get annualized. So that's probably
I will
what's
get you that.
incorrect. This is probably 75 to 75.
I mean, it's great, but a lot of people just simply don't know about it. So I understand about the
Yeah.
messaging as well. They're
That one's
concerned
on it.
about the messaging about, oh, what, our utility bill's gonna go up again. You know, but they're not getting the message about all the things that the town has put in place to help reduce that.
Yeah.
And help make that more manageable. In fact, a lot of people I talk to and I introduce that to, they say, I didn't know about that. Maybe you can have it on the water bills or something like that. Something or an insert.
It has been,
Yeah.
it has been,
You know, people,
but it's word of mouth,
I get.
really, it's word of
I
mouth.
get that.
Mhm.
I understand how hard it is to get the word.
Yes. Thank you.
People are too busy with their lives,
Finding Spain trips.
but I appreciate your comments.
Appreciate that, Trustee Ken. I do want to stress that obviously over the last 4 years, we've made some pretty significant changes to the rate structure. I mean, much of that was absolutely necessary, right? Because we do have to meet those revenue requirements. But I do want to point out, and I don't know if this sells anybody or not, but you know, we have an opportunity here to not yank customers' chains around, right? Like we have been doing for the last couple of years, right? To make significant changes to the rate structure, right? We have an opportunity here under the request that I had proposed last week or last month, I apologize, to really kind of keep the rate structure the same for well over the majority of users in the town and also provide a bit of relief for those top end users. I do want to stress that there's a huge opportunity here. And so, yes, we could significantly modify the structure, but I just want to stress that.
So your plan benefits high-end users, right? Because it's increasing the highest tier.
Correct.
For gallons, 1,000 gallons. The only, so our most frequent customers, or I would say are our average potable irrigation users, those are the ones that are most volatile bills. And so we're talking about a difference per month of $6, which are associated with wastewater and stormwater primarily. But if you see some of them go into the higher tier, so it's the difference between $6 a month versus $9 a month. That's the biggest difference that I'm really noticing across the board for users that would impact. So really, you're taking those mid-level users and increasing them $4 a month with that idea. You're taking the high-end users and decreasing it $2 a month. They are so, it's not significant, right? So, I mean, in my mind.
I guess, and I don't mean to interrupt, as far as those, you know, anybody between about 47,000 to 86,000, you would be seeing for a resident that's seeing an average bill of $119, rather than taking that up simply the $6 for sewer, you're actually taking it up to 128, right? Because it's technically an increase of $14.82. What I'd be proposing would be an increase of $6, which is really the same as what the proposed sewer and drainage is anyway. We have to do that. That's not really a question, I don't think, in anybody's mind. So I'm looking at page 6 specifically and page 7 also.
Single family high user,
Correct.
but my page numbers must be different.
Yeah, average non-potable, I think is what trustee, Mayor Pro Tem,
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
average non-potable.
I think it's just because I'm looking at Adobe pages. Okay, so $1 difference for non-pot is what you're looking at.
I'm not sure if we're looking at the same thing. I'm looking at, I'd be looking at the
Right,
difference
that's
between the average bill of 119 to 128.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
looking at the next column, which is the monthly.
Sure.
So. I mean, I don't see a significant difference between those two, so honestly, I could go either way. I do want to acknowledge though, that the majority of our users would see an increase in the idea versus the high-end users would see such a slight decrease in a monthly rate.
It would not be a lot for the high end tier, but the point that I was trying to get across before was that in order for us to meet revenue requirements, we can actually leave the structure very much the same and provide a little bit of relief to those top end users. But I would be more concerned about shocking our residents, and especially, again, these folks that are paying about $119 a month, taking them up to about 130 seems excessive to me, and that's just my opinion. But that
What-
always open for discussion, of course.
So I guess one consideration is those high-end users, they're seeing that like for irrigation purposes, right? So they're seeing those spikes over high bills during irrigation season.
The page that we're looking at though is average non-potable irrigation users, and the other one, page, the next page is average potable irrigation users, which goes from 168 to 177. So
I'm not looking at RAG. 60. I'm definitely not looking at the same page as you, so
I'm looking at this one here. Average non-pot users, 47,000 gallons. Takes your average bill from 119 to 128. And the next page, which is average potable users, 86,000 gallons, takes it from 168 to 177.
I think what I
Now,
showed
these
you.
are the sewer numbers, right? So the sewer numbers basically say the same, but you're talking about really in my opinion, excessive increase, right? Going from, $5-6 on sewer to to 15 instead of 5 or 6.
yeah, I'm
So
not,
that's a $10 increase.
okay, I'm not talking about RAG at all. So you're comparing it against RAG.
Correct.
Okay, so I was comparing your recommendation versus proposed. So those ones are very similar.
You mean the existing rate
Existing,
structure?
yes, existing.
Existing.
I just want to clarify that, yes.
Talking about, okay, so existing is 2025 rates.
And the,
Proposed is proposed structure.
Oh, that's correct, but,
Okay.
but that,
Versus this one.
and that's what I was trying to clarify before. The first set of proposed structures that's on that table includes just utilizing the existing rate structure that we have today with no changes at all. Okay. So there'd be existing water rate structure.
The monthly change here for proposed versus the monthly change here
Yep.
for Mayor Pro Tem Mason. So like on this one, I see a difference of $598 versus $658.
So
$60 difference.
So I want
60
to, so just so for my clarity, you're recommending what is the proposed structure, which is really the existing rates, which is basically what I've been saying for the most part. I mean, my modification is insignificant compared to what the existing rate structure is, except it doesn't provide that
I just
that
wanna-
little bit of relief to
Just want to
top
make sure
end
we're
users.
using the same language. I'm
Understood.
using the box of proposed structure.
Understood.
Which includes increase of sewer and storm.
I'm tracking.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so the point I was gonna make to support your choice is that the times in which, we're looking at yearly averages, right? But the times in which your proposed, the water, the Mayor Pro Tem Mason request, the last box in each option, that's going to avoid those really high irrigation bills. That's when you'll see the biggest change in those. So we're not gonna see such high peaks or excessive bills. I mean, it's still not gonna be a giant change, but if anything, it'll just kind of normalize those slightly.
Yeah.
So it won't be it'll still be outrageous if you're using a ton of water, but it's not gonna be that's where you'll see the biggest savings on a yearly basis is on this really high one. So it could prevent the super peaks that we see sometimes for very few users
Sure.
based on excessively high water.
And I agree. And maybe I should have been more clear about what it is I support. I would support either using the proposed or my request from last month. What I would not support, unfortunately, is the advisory group's recommendation. I just think it'd be disproportionately impactful to the majority of residents, really.
I see where the confusion is, because they're all proposed. But mine's 43, 370, 47.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, I mean, I could go, honestly, I'd be willing to consider both of those to reduce super high peak bills with the water being Mayor Pro Tem Mason request. Honestly, and then of course sewer and drainage, I don't know if anybody is concerned about those whatsoever, not at this point, so I don't think there's any recommendation to go against those proposed rates. But I would be beneficial for either of those. The RAG recommendation, though, I do not think is good for this year, mostly because those multifamily increases, significant changes for those. I don't know. I think we need like a consolidated direction. I don't know. And that's why I was trying to pull it together. But so I could go with Mason.
Other comments?
You know, the proposed using the existing is probably gonna be the most reasonable for people like me that are on potable systems. Okay, it's going to impact the most, though, the low users. That's who's gonna take the biggest hit. And what do we have, I think. What is it, low? I had those numbers here. What is the total amount of the low users in comparison?
The low users.
Right. But again, like I say, using the existing, what we're proposing is 97. If we go with the RAG on that, that's $90. That's gonna be the one having the most impact. I'm okay with either one. But, and it would benefit me more going since I have the potable system. But, you know, it's what's gonna, you
Well,
know,
yeah.
what's gonna benefit the whole town
Full,
fast.
full disclosure, just so, you know, any residents that might be listening or anything like that, I did run the numbers under the advisory group's recommendation for myself. And in fact, I use so little water that my rates would in fact go down. The reason why I'm advocating for keeping the structure either the same or using my proposed structure is because the majority of residents in town would see an increase.
Mhm. Oh, I agree.
I'm not interested in that. I think we've done enough.
I think if
And-
that's what we want to do, I think that'd be great, you know, trying to keep it down as minimal as possible with the impact. Like I say, we are gonna have one certain group that is gonna have a pretty good impact, but it looks like everybody else will be decreased on that. Correct?
Well, I want to make sure I'm following you correctly.
The low users is gonna have the biggest impact as far as what they're gonna be paying monthly.
Sure. So your users that use an average of 23,000 gallons a month, right, which is your low users,
Mm-hmm.
would see a $2.43 decrease on their bill, which does include these sewer increase
Well,
of
I'm looking at-
approximately $5. But they're seeing the fact is they're seeing a $2.43 increase decrease to their bill.
Okay,
But again, that is by far and away not the majority of users in the town.
that's good.
23,000 for the year. So
Yeah,
that
it's
we're
been a
talking-
month.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
for the whole month.
Yeah, I think whatever we can do for residents would be the best. You know, try to keep the impact, especially with inflation and everything else that's happening, so.
I think the proposed water, Mason, sewer proposed, drainage proposed sees the least impact the majority of the users and by far a lesser impact than for multifamily users, like by far. That it really, the RAG one, even I understand why it makes sense, but it really is a significant change for any multifamily water users.
While we're here, I did want to express Trustee Teets's support for the advisory group recommendations. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us for this discussion this evening, but did want to pass that along to staff. Any other discussion?
Right, perfect, was there, I have RAG recommendation from trustee Cannon, RAG recommendation from trustee Wiegand, Mayor Pro Tem Mason recommendation from Mayor Pro Tem Mason, and Mayor Pro Tem Mason recommendation from trustee Day. There was,
I think I'm gonna switch to theirs.
And I think I am too. You know, I appreciate everything the RAG group did, but.
Oh,
Of course.
But listening to this and understanding the messaging and what our residents have had to go through for the past, 5 years of, you know, this reduced amount of shock to them and confusion. Because basically, you know, your structure increases the tier amount for a majority of users. What, 2,000 households in our town? But
I think
but
it was
it's still
3% of all bills. It was fairly,
no,
it's
I-
fairly insignificant.
Well,
If
they
it-
broke it out.
Yeah.
Earlier, they said what those would be. They said 1,900 customers for non-potable, 2,000 for potable, high users, 400. And 1,300 for low users. I like the idea of keeping, you know, the water rates the same. You know, so just, now you're just reflecting the cost increase for the sewer. and everything.
Mr. Gator, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
If I could, yes. Mr.
Sure, you were part of the advisory group, so let's please have that.
So one, I had a question for, and then the other was just a clarification on the multifamily. This is the hard part. We said this in the RAG group is you guys have to boost at the ground to come back to you. So you're doing your job. On the multifamily, the reason that went up more is because, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, the multifamily was not recovering its proper amounts of revenue from the existing rate structure. That's why there was a bigger change in the multifamily, so that it actually recovered the cost of the water that it was using. Because what we have right now, commercial uses 7.5, they pay for 7.5. Single family uses 83 roughly, or 84%, they recovered that. Multifamily was short by like 1%. And so that was the reason you saw a bigger jump there, just for context on that. The second question I had was for Raptalis, because this was, you know, we spent hours going through this. Did the numbers change? Because we were told if we changed a tier to make it larger, we would have to change the rates in the lower structures to make sure we still met the revenue requirements. So I love the idea of taking tier 3 that Trustee Mason has and boosting that to 35,000, because that makes a huge difference. But then you're taking what was existing 20,000 gallons to 35,000 gallons that was currently being charged at $23.86. And you're now billing that at $16.76, or are you changing the rates to cover that? Because the existing rate structure, as I understand it's been presented before,
Okay.
are the numbers changing that you're charging for those tiers?
Yes.
So
Yes,
the
sir.
tiers are changing, they're not staying the same.
Well, under the alternative to the trustee Mason recommendation, we do that 35,000 gallons. So when you expand that, you're capturing more volume in a lower tier,
Sure.
less volume in the higher or more
Yeah.
expensive tier. So that's going to change all of the other tiers.
So the actual cost per each tier will change. It
Yes.
is not this existing structure, it is a totally new structure.
Yes. It's the same. Well,
Same-
yes and
same
yes and
tiers,
yes. Yeah.
tiers Here are
Yeah.
different. though.
Yes.
Got it, thank you. I just want to clarify that, because I was like, how are we recovering the same thing? So the
Yeah.
actual amount you pay per 1,000 gallons under the current tier, from 3,000 to 7,000, you currently pay $12.90. What would that change to? I didn't see that in the packet.
1355. It's in the back in the appendix there, but it's at 1355. So it's the same 4-tiered structure,
Just different numbers.
different, and we've got a different tier. Yeah, that's
Okay, I
that's
just wanted to
that's the
make
confusion,
sure
right?
The same exact, so the number, same structure, different numbers in each tier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a page? Yeah, look, I'm not sure if it is.
In the
I
No.
don't remember seeing it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that either.
Oh,
It's not.
it's not, huh?
Did not get adjusted.
Okay.
So, and that is something to clarify. So the rate structure insofar as it would maintain a base rate that has a essential use, wow, words, included, and it would remain the same. So 0 to 3,000 usage is $0. That those first tiers would be the same. So it'd be then, 4,000 to 7,000. And then it would be at a new rate. They wouldn't be at the same rate. So there still would be bill impacts that would impact most customers, all customers, even though we would be saying there's a 0 rate revenue change.
I don't like that.
Yes. So is these numbers correct then?
Uh,
We're looking at?
Well,
Yeah.
so again, the tier numbers are not in the packet. They seem to be not in the appendix. However, if you're looking at these numbers, for example, on page 6, right, under my proposed structure, You're taking the average monthly bill under the proposed structure from 119.52 to 120.11 under my proposal, rather than the advisory group's recommendation of taking that up to 128, right?
The reason why I'm immediately balking is because if we're having the message of the water portion of your rates isn't increasing, and then they look at their bill and they see the price per 1,000 gallons, and that number is bigger for the majority of every tier that everyone uses, that is a very complicated of like, you said the water rates aren't going up, but I see a higher dollar amount per 100,000 on all of these tiers. So that is that is not a clear message, because we can come out and say, no increase in water rates. And then a news outlet comes out and be like, that's really weird because this number is bigger than this number. And that is a super clear and easy way to see that. So maybe, and when we're looking at overall per year, like it evens out, right? But when we're talking about messaging, that looks bad. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Session.
Yeah, we don't have time for another work session.
But the point is, every one of those lower ones will be higher.
How can
They
we,
all have to be higher.
how can we message that? I mean, is there an easy way? I mean, have you?
We would be messaging a rate structure change, even under the additional rate alternative that we brought forward, we would still be messaging a rate structure change. So we would be messaging, the water fund is not looking to increase revenues this year. We have implemented another rate structure change, though. So, I mean, that is the difficult question at hand.
Does that make sense, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
All those numbers would be.
It makes sense. However, it really doesn't change my opinion about it. I still think that what I've proposed will impact users the most, or the least that it possibly can. Let's put it that way.
So now so I mean, it's gonna take me a second to.
That's fine, process it. You're fine.
Because I am a little confused. on this. So the proposed structure, from what I saw, didn't change what that water is per thousand. Right?
Right.
Proposed structure.
The existing structure,
The-
where it says water existing.
So the 2025 rates are over the existing structure.
Exactly.
The proposed structure doesn't change that, and then it goes up as the sewer and the drain.
Correct.
And that's across all categories. Right?
The sewer and drainage increase are constant and the same across the three sets of alternatives that you have in front of them.
So let me ask this question. I'm just talking about the water. portion.
Okay.
The water portion, if under the proposed structure, doesn't go up under any categories. Is that correct? Or am I nuts?
The total revenue that the town would receive through water rates would be the same under all three structures.
You're still not answering my question. So I look at page 6, 7, 8, and I look at the 2025 rates and I see the proposed structure, and I don't see a change in the water. Right. So thank you for correcting that.
What?
No buts.
No, it's not a button.
No, let me finish. So what it is reflected in those changes is the increase in the sewer and the drainage. Okay. If we go with Brian's recommendation to change that tier basically for one water group, then we don't have that information in this packet, what those costs are gonna be.
It is in the packet.
Yeah.
Right here.
Well, we don't have the rate, the breakdown of what those rates would be.
Per tier, per
Per tier.
100,000. Do you have that though? Will we just talk about it?
Yes.
Can we-
Give me 1 second, having some.
Oh, he's having some SharePoint
The reason-
difficulties.
Okay, question. We were all kind of glamming onto this idea of, okay, either the proposed structure or Brian Mason's recommendation structure. We were pulling back away from the RAG recommendation. And if we just look at those proposed structure versus Mayor Pro Tem's, Brian's request structure. I don't see any. Yeah,
Might I recommend that we take a peek at one of the detailed usage patterns in the appendix? We could look at page either 20, 21, and it might be able to show the detailed difference a little more clearly. Because if you're to see on page 20, which is the low users annual profile. So across the top in the light blue shows the 1,000 gallons that are used each month. So again, 23,000 total in March, which is essentially the bill that you get for usage in February, which is the shortest month of the year, will be the smallest month for usage. That's why that's 1,000 on average. The others are 2,000. You can see here that in gray are the 2025 rates for all three utilities. Lines 5, 6, and 7 represent using the existing, so 2025 rate with the proposed sewer and drainage changes. Lines 10, 11, and 12, those sewer and drainage rates are exactly the same with the RAG recommendation rates there. And then lines 15, 16, and 17 show Mayor Pro Tem's change, which for the low users would be exactly the same because he's not advocating a change to remove the essential use out of the base. So for the low users, those rates are exactly the same. If you go on to the next page, is where you'll start to see a difference once you get into, above 3,000 gallons usage. So you have to get to 4,000 or above. You can see the usage then across, when the usage is only 3,000 gallons, the water existing, like line 24 at 5481 is the same as line 34, 5481. But when you see into the summer months, when there's a little bit more and it's more pronounced, if you move on to page 22, which is the average potable irrigation user, and that annual pattern of where you're seeing 14, 15, 10,000 gallons there in the summer, you can see how those rates then do change. And there's a slight difference, a minimal increase on those months in the water rates. Between the Mayor Pro Tem, so line 43 and line 53 would be what you're comparing. Line 48 there in the middle is the RAG recommendation, what those rates will look like. So that gives you a summarized snapshot.
I understand.
Okay.
Just trying to get back to where that original, what broke down, we were all seemed kind of being kind of unison, something, and all of a sudden kind of broke down. And Mr. Gator brought up, well, what does that do to the rates? And then there was discussion about, oh, those rates aren't in here. And I'm like, okay, so what's the issue then? Because I'm missing something.
The point is that, math, I assume this will be the case. Every number per 1,000 gallon will be higher under Brian's on your bill. You will see a higher number per 1,000 gallons for every tier. Now, the last tier,
Because it's being
with the
adjusted.
exception of one missing tier, right? But every tier that's there will be a higher dollar amount than it is right now. So when you're looking at your bill and we're saying we don't need more revenue for water, that kind of stuff, but every number is bigger, that's a hard message to sell. Because sure, like if you're using a ton, then more is going to be in that bottom chunk, sure. But every dollar amount will be larger than it is right now. So we can't go and message saying we're not asking for more money for water, and then every number is bigger.
Okay.
We can't do that. That's I understand that it will help people. Sure, it does make a difference, but one for one, you look at them and you're saying we're not charging more, we don't need more money for water, but all your numbers are bigger. That you can't sell that as that doesn't make sense to anybody looking at one.
Then making sense would be go with the proposed structure as opposed to
the existing.
The existing structure. Yeah.
all right, let's
Existing proposed.
Well,
okay.
Right.
Correct.
I'm sorry, again, maybe that's the language you're using. I've got 25 rates, a proposed structure, a RAG recommendation, and I got a Mayor Pro Tem.
And if you look at it, it says existing on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Water existing.
Okay,
Water existing. Like
Mhm.
I guess we have to talk about image, but
then I'm more in favor of the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So you're on that. Yeah. 5, 6, 7, 8. 9. Like Brian, I get it, and I think that helps more people, but it doesn't look right on your bill.
And,
It's such a minor change.
I am happy to support the proposed existing structure. I'm more than happy to do that.
Without the, and I'm really glad that was brought up, because I hate to put my name behind that and just like vouch that.
Yeah.
Don't worry, water rates aren't changing, like water rates, we're not making a significant change here, and then for all the numbers to be there. Because I think that's our good news story right now, like that's a huge win for all these years that we put into this, to be able to say something like that. So, we can't sell it, and we can't like make people trust us if all those numbers are.
Agreed.
We can try putting that up there, but I don't think they can see it. Hannah, do we have Ms. Clerk, do we have access to to share? Is Todd a presenter? Promoted, that was the word I was looking for. He did, but it's been kicked off a couple times. Yep. So to clarify, and with all the data that was presented, I would say we missed one piece of including in the packet. We were going for summary stats.
It's very specific, so I'm glad you guys can pull this together last minute.
Yes.
And we're just going to have to blow it up to the best that we can for you to be able to see it
So
a little bit more. So we'll just kind of roll. It's like about to.
Can you make one line this high?
You guys can get up and go look at it.
It's right here.
Oh, it's also behind you.
Trustee
Okay.
Ken.
Trustee Cannon, sorry.
That might be easier.
Thank you.
That it is.
Forget that it's there.
I do too.
Brand new.
That's the new one.
So this is the existing rate structure. You have a base rate of $54.81. That includes 3,000 gallons of volume. So if you use 2,000, you pay $54.81. You use 3,000, you pay $54.81. After 3,000 gallons, you will pay $12.97 or $12.90 between 3,000 and 7,000. $16.76 between 7 and 20,000, and then over 20,000 is $23.86. So that's the existing rate structure. The RAG recommendation was a 3-tiered structure, and there's some other differences here too. Let me just move this guy over a little bit here. You can see the base rate changed because the idea was removing that volume allowance for a number of reasons. So when you remove the volume allowance, that reduces the cost you need to recover in the service charge. So what that does, what that says is, well, we have more costs we need to recover in those tiers. So those tiers are going to be a higher price. And you can see this tier 1 is $13.73 versus $12.90 for the quote unquote first tier you're paying in the existing structure. $15.43 and $21.46. Now, one thing to consider is, well, wait a minute, Todd, how come this is $21.46 and the existing one says $23.86? Well, we also adjusted the ratio of pricing between the tiers. So a lot of levers are moving here. However, both of these rate structures are going to recover the same amount of money. So if you needed to get $1 million, and these rate structures were designed to get $1 million, the existing structure will give you $1 million, the RAG recommendation will get you $1 million, and the other proposed will get you $1 million. So let's look real briefly at the alternative 2, which is Trustee Mason proposal. We go back to the 5481, which is what you're paying now. And it's the same structure, 4 tiers. However, the tier 3 now, instead of 20,000 gallons, is 35,000 gallons. Well, why do the rates change when everything else is the same? Well, it has to do with the amount of volume you're billing in tier 2, between tier 2 and tier 3. Before, it was 7 to 20, so there's less volume billed which means we're getting more volume billed at that higher tier above 20,000 gallons, which pushes down the other tiered rates. So this one, by expanding it to 7 to 35, you're getting less revenue from that top tier because there's less volume there now.
Right.
And so that pushes up the tier 1 and tier 2. So it's can be very complex and confusing. You have to scratch your head sometimes, understanding how all the levers are. And the challenge was we didn't have that detail in the memo to show the pricing ratios change and percentage of volume and stuff. We can certainly give that to you to give you more context around why these numbers are different, although they are recovering the same amount of money. That's really that's the crux of it, is I think providing that information, the volume that's billed in each of the tiers, just so you have some context of, well, why does it 1355 versus 1290? That might be helpful for you. We can certainly do that for you. I'll see if I can spread this out a little bit. Is there another structure you'd like to look at? This is kind of overlapping everything here, making it probably more complicated, more confusing than it needs to be. Let me see if I can shrink some of this down.
Really, we need to look at D and alternate 2 rates.
Yes, alternate 2. Let me see how I can do this here. Yeah, it's just the way it goes. It's part of our training, I think. Give me just 1 second.
This is helpful, Todd. Thank you.
Give me a second here and I'll get this fixed up here. I think I'm giving everyone vertigo here. Okay. There we go. Trying to make it easier, and apparently I've just made it more difficult. Okay. So there's the alt 1 there. So the $12.90, you want to compare it against which structure?
Alt 2.
Alt 2. Okay. So I'm just going to hide this alt 1. Oops. There we go. So the base rate's still the same. I'll just hide that there. So 1355 versus 1290, those are the same. Or that's tier 1. Tier 2.
Yeah, so every tier price on your bill will be higher, will look higher. Obviously, tier 3 includes a significant number of gallons more, but when you're looking at side by side, every single one of those numbers is higher.
And that's because we're adding 15,000 gallons to that third tier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there is some usage there. Once you get above 35, it's very small amount of volume, but there's enough there, I think, to make that impact with these structures.
And so when we're talking about messaging, that is a hard conversation to have, because that is a completely different structure in my mind. But if you visually, just your perception of looking at it, be like, all those numbers.
Yeah. The people between 20 and 35 will be seeing the decrease here, I think. Seeing a little bit, yeah. Okay, that's what the idea was, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think you make a great point as far as that goes. The messaging would be, but I think the messaging would still come back to what Ms. Smith was mentioning, which is that in fact, unless we go with the proposed structure, there would be a rate structure change regardless, right? So that I don't know that the messaging necessarily changes whether we go with the advisory group or go with what I've recommended, right? Because it is still a rate structure change.
I mean, if we're avoiding the
If we're trying to
about
say
a
we're
rate
not going to
structure change,
increase, yeah.
yeah, we're avoiding that conversation of changing, like pulling that on them again and changing the rate structure all over again.
Yeah.
That's not being accomplished with your solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be fine to support the proposed structure. I don't know if that changes either of your opinions.
It all goes back to who do you want to pay? I mean, we're all going to be collecting the same amount of money per month, per year. for our usage. It depends upon where we wanted to shift the cost burden to, okay? And, you know, by going to the existing proposed, okay, we're gonna be shifting, and yours too, we'd be shifting most of it to the low users. On the percent, let me just, because we're looking at, currently they're at 92. I mean, it ain't that much, okay? It's $92 a month, where the proposed is 97.23, okay? And yours is the same price, where if we did the rag, it'd be $90.44 a month on an average. So it's, again, it depends upon where you're wanting to put it. And
And I think to your point, I mean, the proposed, really, yes,
and
everybody's getting an increase to their sewer rate.
Oh,
But this way, we wouldn't be, under the advisory group's proposal, you would be discounting folks that are at the lower end, whereas under the proposed
Yeah.
structure, really everybody
Right.
equally gets a portion of the sewer increase.
I don't necessarily think it was discounting their amount. It's, I think what they were saying, that's kind of the more fair amount, what they were using is what the rag came up with at that point on the low users.
I can speak to that if that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so the idea that the RAG had, the reason that we went away from the essential use included in the base price is what was happening is you'd have users that are using anywhere from 1,000 up to 2,900 gallons of water are actually paying for water that they aren't actually using from the system. So in essence, by having that larger ratio there, and generally, this is not all cases, but usually it's, you know, when we talk about our seniors or veterans or people who are on lower incomes, they're not typically the ones with a 50,000 square foot yard and things like that, right? They're not typically the 35,000 gallon users. They're typically the 1 and 2,000 gallon users. And so our thought process was, rather than just putting that in, we asked Raftalis to go and give us, okay, what is the actual cost of providing water? And then we also balance that against the board's desire to say, we also want people to be wise with their water use. And saying, we understand that as people use more water, there's more strain on the water plant. So we have a modifier. So as you go up through each tier, you pay a little bit more because you're placing more of a strain on the water plant. And so that first tier basically says, what does it cost to deliver this 1,000 gallons of water? And everyone pays that rate. Then as you use more water, you're placing more strain. So there is a small adjustment up. So it's not so drastic, but that says, hey, there is additional cost coming to the plants. We're going to charge a little bit more back in this tier. And then we said, hey, when we get to that 35,000, we feel like that's a lot of water, a lot of strain on the system. Maybe there should be a bigger price jump to say, hey, maybe rethink some of the water use at this point, was the thought process behind that. But it really was based on the data that Raftalis has been able to recover, because they've done this for several years now, of what does it cost to deliver water. And the issue is, this is just data that they had some of that when they did the last round, but every year we have more and we have better data. So we can actually calculate what is the usage that needs to be charged to pay the cost. So it's as evenly and fairly distributed across the board. So commercial's not paying anyone's way, residential's not paying anyone's way, multifamily's not paying anyone's way. Each category is paying for the water they use. And then within that tier, people are paying for the strain that they put on the system. That was the idea behind what we put. And again, it does cause a shift because the old system was set up under different priorities. So that's why there is a shift. So it does create a shift, and we acknowledge that that's a question that you as the board are going to have to answer. But that was the reasoning behind it, was because it puts it in a place where it is now consistent based on what is the cost of us to deliver water. And as those costs change through the years, there might need to be minor adjustments again in future years, whether it's a 3% or whatever, just as costs increase. But it's now consistently calculated across all the classes and all users.
Thank you. And I appreciate that opinion, Mr. Gator. I do want to stress, the board, just as you know, some history, we did all agree that we wanted to have essential use a few years ago. Now, if we don't want to include the 3,000 gallons in the, as far as essential use goes, as far as a base tier, that's fine. But again, we will be shifting the burden to the majority of again, any users that are between 3,000 and 19,000 gallons. So I cannot necessarily support that personally.
It's such a drastic change to it right now, and I think I get it and I understand. And I know there are, and I recommended this last time, was like, there was a group that came in saying that they're used so little water, yet they're paying 50,000, right? So there is a group of users like that. But I'm seeing the trade-off here is like heavily increasing multifamily versus that. And those are, if not even probably more extreme users for when it comes to affordability. I don't know. If we have the opportunity to not have to change the revenue for water, and then we come out with bills where every tier costs more, that doesn't, it just makes me feel yucky. So I don't know. I'm still going with for water, the existing, and I think that we're gonna have increases in other areas, and I think that's what is going to impact our users. That's like the majority of the changes, right? So I think changing all three of them at the same time is a shock. And if we don't have to change it for revenue, I don't think this is the time to do it for water.
I would be fine to support the proposed with the existing water rates. I would be fine to do that. I don't know how you
So
guys
the
feel about it.
messaging then is, you know, you will see an increase in your utility bills. Water is not changing,
Right,
Correct.
but this reflects increases in sewer
Sewer.
and drainage.
right,
That's an easy message.
right. It's so complex when every single one is changing, but I think that is easier to swallow when it comes to it. Both the messaging and even understanding the bill. So I don't know. That's what I'm leaning for sure at this point.
Trustee Beak?
Yeah, I think mine still would be between the proposed existing and the RAG, but I will go either way, however you guys want to do that. So the proposed existing, I can get behind too.
Crystal clear for everybody.
We just needed
Clear as mud.
consensus.
Clear as
Yeah,
mud.
that's what we needed. So thank you. We were good with anything, but.
Thank you, John.
Well, at this point, we'll shift into an impact fee discussion. The impact fee discussion is looking at the water fund impact fees and the wastewater fund impact fees. And there are some nuances mainly related to the water fee impact discussion. I'm going to let Todd lead the way here when he gets his screen back up to share.
Okay, hopefully we can see that there. Okay, great. Okay, so we're shifting gears here a little bit. So it's clear the cash on water rates and wastewater rates, because what we're talking about, although is, again, a revenue source for the utility, it's something very different than rates, and that's impact fees. Here's our agenda for this evening. It just summarizes what we've been working on the impact fee side. Real quick, we've been through all these processes here, the financial plan, the cost service and rate design. Obviously, we've been talking about that for the past hour or so. And we have our impact fees or TAP fees. You might hear me say TAP fees or impact fees. I'm using it interchangeably. And so we're talking about the TAP fees today, impact fees today, and what we've come up with for a cost to have new development tie into the system and pay their proportionate share of capacity cost to serve them. So here's some definitions. It's a one-time fee for capacity. So it's as if you're joining a gym. You pay the initiation fee. It gives you access to all the gyms, whereas the user fee, it helps keep the treadmills running. Or if you have an incremental fee for increased capacity. So if you're going from a 2-inch meter to a 3-inch meter, you're requiring additional capacity to be reserved in the system for you. The key thing here is the way the capacity fee, impact fees are set is based on the value of the system and the amount of capacity needed by new development. And I've got a little illustration to show how that works. And it basically represents the cost to reserve capacity in the system for that new development. Everyone pays into that. That way, everybody's got their proportionate share of capacity needed to serve them. And it's the valuation in terms of major backbone facilities, like a water treatment plant, a treated water storage tank, major transmission mains, and treated storage. There are other facilities in the other infrastructure that's included, in the system that may not be part of the impact fee. There might be mains that have been donated by developers, or they might be facilities that only benefit certain areas of town, and it's only for a specific neighborhood, and there's a pump station there. We wouldn't use a general impact fee to recover that cost because it's only specific to that specific area of town. We don't have that here. Key thing here is that impact fees should not be used to fund operations, meaning if your rate revenue is short, if your rate structure is insufficient, you shouldn't use impact fee revenue to pay for operations. In fact, in the statute, it does not allow you to do that. And it's not a great way to go because impact fees can be very cyclical in nature with the economy and everything. So here are some statutory requirements. Colorado Revised Statutes 20-20-104.5 stipulates what an impact fee is and what can be included and how you need to develop those. So it's legislatively adopted. And basically they say it's intended to defray the cost of capital for expansion facilities for new development. And local government has some requirements to quantify those impacts, basically the impact fee schedule for the proposed development. And you have to develop the fee that is proportionate to the benefit they're getting. So it has to be rationally related or roughly proportional to the benefit the customers, the new development is getting. So the fees have to be roughly proportional to one another for what you're getting. A little tongue-tied this evening. Sorry about that. So there's some benefits of the tap fee. Obviously, it's a diversified revenue source to fund expansion-related capital. And it can reduce the reliance on issuing debt to fund expenditures. So if you've been collecting impact fees for some time, you need to help fund that expansion of the wastewater plant or water plant, you can use those funds to help draw down what kind of bond issues you might need. It can mitigate rate increases. It's not going to lower increases, but by having a second revenue stream to help fund that expansion capital, you are asking less of the rate revenues to help fund expansion capital when impact fee revenue is insufficient over the course of 1 or 2 years due to changes in economic development. And it is a mechanism to recoup expansion costs funded by existing customers. What that's saying is that if you have an impact fee, and long ago, in 1970s, the existing customers built this fantastic water or wastewater treatment plant with a significant amount of capacity saying, come to our town and tie into our town. They funded that treatment plant up front with existing extra capacity. The tap fees you receive in the future kind of recoup the bank account. There's not a credit or a check written to the existing customers. It kind of replenishes the bank account to help maybe keep the future revenue adjustments or rate increases down because they're kind of getting a reimbursement from those new customers coming in. That's the theoretical concept of how this works, and there's a lot of communities that are like that. So here's the difference between impact fees and user rates. User rates obviously assessed monthly, just like we've been discussing. They recover O&M, can recover a portion of debt service, whether that's on repair and replacement projects or whether that's on expansion projects. You have other capital costs. The structure is a monthly fixed charge and a volumetric rate, just like what we've been discussing. And the costs are recovered over a fiscal year. So rates are annual type of revenue recovery. Tap fees are different. It's the one-time charge, recovers the cost to serve new development based on the valuation of wells, treatment plants, storage, T&D, water rights. And the structure is based on, I'll say here, an EQR basis, that's equivalent residential, or a 3/4 inch basis of customers. We state everything at a 3/4 inch basis. So those costs of capacity of the value of the system is recovered when all the capacity has been sold. So it's a time horizon rather than an annual cost recover on user rates, a time. And you may never recover all the costs because maybe growth stopped before the capacity is all sold. It's possible. So the approach we used here to calculate these fees is we looked at the valuation. This is an example on a water example. We have our water treatment plant, the value of that, the value of the transmission and distribution system, the storage, pumping, those existing facilities valuation. We use an index to help evaluate what's the cost to replace those facilities today in today's dollars. We divide that by the capacity of the system in gallons per day, because we're talking about, we want customers to buy in, they have a certain capacity requirement. So we need to look at our fee in terms of capacity. So we divide by the capacity of the system, 1 million gallons per day, peak demand or whatever. We then take that unit cost, which is dollars per gallons per day, and we multiply it times what's the theoretical peak demand of a 3/4 inch meter. So we can ensure that we're recovering the cost of a capacity that can be pumped through a 3/4 inch meter. And that gives us our 3/4 inch impact fee. Now, for larger meter sizes, we simply look at the 3/4 inch meter fee, and we know that as you increase the meter size, the capacity of the meter also increases. So for example, a 3/4 inch meter can put through about 20 to 25 gallons per minute. A 1-inch meter is about 35 gallons per minute. So there's a capacity differential. So the ratio between those two numbers is the ratio we use to increase the impact fees based on meter size. Pretty straightforward and standard practice. So that's the basis for the impact fee. And that's all the gyrations we went through working with staff Megan and Nick here to develop the impact fees. Now, for this go around, we're proposing 2 additional impact fees for different types of development here. So we have our current fees here. We have our residential single units, just single family residential. The current fee potable is $11,507. And we have this new category called non-potable system. And that is for customers that will be tying into the system, but we're having a separate non-potable well to irrigate outside. So they're not going to be using, their capacity is going to be somewhat different. Although they're still getting a 3/4 inch meter, their capacity is going to be somewhat different. Their capacity in the meter is the same, but their demands are going to be different on the system. Same thing with residential multi-unit on a per dwelling unit basis, $8,055. And commercial and industrial is pretty straightforward based on meter size. You can see it scales as we increase the meter size because you need additional capacity to serve larger meter sizes. So let's look at the calculated fee we came up with for the non-potable system for single unit, and that's $7,340. And for the potable system, it's $16,312. What we're saying there is that the peak demand, potential peak demand for a potable system is worth $16,312. That's because we have indoor, we have outdoor usage, and that the combination of that gives us a higher fee. With a non-potable system, there's very little peak demand. It's basically indoor demand or average day demand. Now, there is some little, when you talk about average, there still is a little bit of peaking in average because you have minimum, but it's negligible. And so that's how we've represented the 7,340 versus the 16,312. So we're just bifurcating the single unit, residential single unit customers. Because we know that development here is going to be changing, and there might be just some new development with just basically no outdoor usage at all, and would get a non-potable tap. Same thing goes for multi-unit residential. Again, we have the non-potable and the potable system. You can see the non-potable for multi-unit and single unit are the same. Well, they both use about the same demand, and it's both indoor usage, and so they have about the same demand patterns and same, capacity requirements for the both of them. That's why they're the same. Again, commercial, it scales up. There's some increases there on the commercial and industrial customers. Over 2 inches, we've proposed this last time, and this was what I think was adopted, was that once you get above 2 inches and above, the demand requirements begin to really expand a bit. So when you look at a 3/4 inch demand, if you look at all the customers of 3/4 inch demands, they're pretty tight band. But as you get to the larger meter sizes, you could have a customer who's going to peak for just 1 point in a year versus someone who's just using full throttle the entire year. They're just tapping out that meter, no pun intended. So we recommend that those be individually reviewed to make sure that you're getting equitable charge to those new development. Wastewater, little more straightforward, no major changes here. The non-potable, potable doesn't really apply here. We've got our existing fees here. Single unit is $10,740, going up slightly to $13,363. And you can see the changes there on the right. Now, we do assess commercial and industrial on a water meter size basis. That's a very common methodology. It's easily understood by developers. We assume that there's still a relationship between demand on water side and some of the effluent on wastewater. Very common approach. Many utilities along the Front Range in your area use this, so this is nothing. We're not giving you anything new and on the fringe there. We can see the change there. If we look at these changes, no one likes an increase, obviously, but if we just look at the inflationary changes of construction cost over the past couple of years since we last looked at this in 2022, they still have been fairly significant. And it's been kind of captured here in these fees. Probably one of the most important slides here is obviously the survey of how you compare against other utilities. We've tried to capture increases for 2026 for some of these other utilities. I can't recall who they might be here, but as you know, everyone's in a different situation with their own impact fees. But you can see with Wellington, we're kind of in the middle today, and with the proposal, you'd be up towards the higher end here. Some of these folks may include water resources or water rights cost in their fee. We don't have that here. So that's just, again, one of the many differences here. And again, I'm not sure that all of these have increased over the past year, but I'm sure these are always under review by many utilities. So that's where we fell with the impact fee calculations. We didn't find anything unusual about when we developed them or anything like that. So we did discuss the potable, non-potable to some degree about coming up with that. We thought that was important to come up with that. Increasing that part or enhancing the schedule with that. So that concludes the discussion on impact fees. I take any questions regarding the calculations and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Cristiano. Trustee Ken, any questions, comments?
I'll reserve that.
Trustee Wiegand?
You got a question. As far as the impact and usage and all that type of stuff, you're basing a lot of this stuff as far as let me think how I want to word this. The impact fees and everything, that includes monthly usage of water plus the initial cost. Is that right? And my question would be is, as our town expands, would there be a reduction in some of that cost? Because like our, utilities right now, our water plant, sewer plant, and all this is based off of what our revenue is currently. And as we go down and increase our population here in town, would that, lower each person's cost as far as what we're paying for the utility itself? See what I mean?
I think I do.
Yeah.
So if what you're referencing is, so kind of the comparison between rates and impact fees is what we're
Right.
wanting to
And
differentiate.
how the growth of the town might help some of the costs down the road.
So growth of town might help rate revenue,
Right.
but that's very separate from impact fee development. So
Okay.
Todd
Yes.
Todd was speaking to, it is very much a system capacity, maximum capacity driven number. So it's how much does the system cost? How much would it cost to build new? How much does it cost to have your piece of capacity reserved for you? So the developer and a single family home or a commercial business, that sort of thing. And that cost doesn't change because you've had more people buy in. Those more people have bought in, paying their kind of pro rata share.
Right.
So then the next year it's still going to be that cost.
Yeah.
And if anything, that cost will continue to increase because the cost to replace our infrastructure will continue to increase.
Okay, that's all factored in on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Trustee Gay?
I'm learning.
Sorry about that.
Oh, I was just making sure I didn't steal his
mean-
thunder and I answered the
Yeah,
question
yeah.
correctly.
Yeah, I was looking at that and, sitting there thinking, the bigger the town gets, right now we are, we got 12,000 people here paying for the cost of the utilities that we've just built, the sewer and the water. And, as we increase from 12,000 to 20,000, whatever, part of that should decrease too, I would assume down the road, maybe. I understand we do have inflation, we got breakdowns, we got all kinds of other things factored in, but I was just wondering if that's one thing that we can actually benefit from growth.
There's also
yeah.
long-term capital investment. You
Yeah.
are
Right.
going to have projects down the road. And so ensuring that there has been revenue collected as the town grows
Mhm.
helps offset increasing rates to pay for that,
Mm-hmm.
that capital expense.
Right, I know it's always gonna be there, right?
Trustee Gady?
The pure utility impact fee comparison
Yes,
is using potable as the examples for a proposal,
yes.
which we better not be doing any potable systems, right? We should only be doing non-pot going forward and forevermore. Like, there are,
Not sure you can.
if we're sinking.
No, you can't control that.
Well, I mean, we can control it insofar as if there is non-potable water available on the parcel that's being developed, we will do everything we can to encourage the dickens out of usage of that.
Yeah.
But there are for sure properties in town that are within our GMA that we know are not currently served by non-potable. They don't have a well. You can't get, there's not a lateral, so you can't get ditch company water there. And we don't want to impede all future development in those areas. We want to be able to encourage appropriate types of growth in on those parcels too. Or we want to be able to allow that for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it's allowable, but every development we have right now is non-pot, is it not?
No. And I mean, most of our commercial
Residential.
Yeah, saddle.
and no, we have a fully platted residential development that has potable water for irrigation, or that does not have non-potable water available for irrigation.
That's where I live, the Meadows.
Well, isn't a new one over there by us?
I mean, new development.
Yeah, new development, correct. Yeah, there's a currently platted single-family residential development waiting to develop.
The north of Buffalo Creek.
No, it's on the
It's
east
over on
side.
the east side. Right, that's what I'm talking.
Correct.
So, I mean, best practice though, and the benefit to all would be, like, if you're looking for affordability, how about that? You want to be in a neighborhood with non-pot systems.
They're gonna pay more money up front, though.
Well,
The,
No, no.
the builder's gonna do that, right?
I mean, for dedicated, but, okay, so when it comes to impact fees though, if we're looking at the non-pot options, that would put us around 20,700 total for wastewater and water, which puts us under Wellington existing and just above Eaton. Proposed for any non-pot.
Yes. Let me check. Let's go back to the
Yeah, that slide,
7,000. So if we,
7,340.
Down quite a bit.
Yeah, and 13,360.
So
Yeah.
these calculator changes by including the non-pot options reduce our impact fees
Absolutely.
for non-pot properties.
we were trying to keep apples to apples here because all of these are other ones that are potable too, but you're absolutely correct. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and I guess what I want to say is a bunch of our major developments would be non-profit. So when we're looking at this right now, we're looking at a decrease of $2,000 for impact fees for, I mean, everything that would be sage in those neighborhoods, which decreases really is a direct savings directly to the homeowners, right? When they're buying those properties, if there's less impact fees. We're looking at a swing of like $9,000 between a potable and non-potable. But it gives people the option to have impact fees that are significantly less than all of these other neighborhoods. That would put us below Erie, below Severance, all of those. And I think is honestly beneficial for somebody with an affordable perspective for fees too, going forward, for what they would expect there. So the addition of the non-pot option there makes some significant improvements for opportunities for affordability in Wellington, would decrease home costs associated with non-pot neighborhoods. I think that's beautiful. Am I interpreting anything incorrectly from what I just said? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's actually a decrease from the impact fees of what we would expect right now, based on that new addition. And the Wellington proposed is really based off of a scenario. I mean, that wouldn't be encouraged for someone looking for a vehicle.
It's proposed, not existing.
And and to be clear, we also, as you are well aware, because there are plenty of also vacant lots in town for infill development. So we're not always talking about, it's not always greenfield development that we're looking to have in our community, right? There's a need for some infill development too. And that would be at the higher price tag.
Yeah, so like anything downtown or any other, neighborhood that has non-pot systems, they would be looking at that 29,674 for single family household. Versus, I don't see that as often in other places other than brand new developments of non-pot options, but I don't know all the properties either. But then we're looking at multifamily too. We are seeing, overall it would be increased for non-pot options, so, but slightly. I don't know, I'm really happy with this. I see an opportunity for affordability for some scenarios that would be beneficial to have like a wide range of opportunities for more diverse pricing to housing. So I think this increases that potential and it makes sense. So I really like that. Yeah, but I just want to draw attention to that because if you look at this and it looks like we're on the high end for the pure utility impact fee, that's only based on the potable scenario. Could we add non-pot and non-pot proposed
Sure.
and Wellington pot proposed to that same
Yeah, absolutely.
view for
Sure, that's a good idea.
public consumption? So you
Yep.
can see that. And this is based off all existing, but all these other places too, we're probably
What-
expecting that
right.
as well.
Yeah, and like Todd kind of alluded to, some of them, so everybody updates on different cycles. Not everybody's like January 1 or April 1 or March 1. And so some of these reflect what will be 2020 or what is currently 2026. Some of them don't. And that's just the unfortunate nature of trying to make comparisons.
Neighboring communities are like 1 or 2 years behind us when it comes to considering this too, not to mention that. So they might have more significant changes within the next couple of years as they kind of catch up and are determining what the cost should be. But yeah, I'd love to see that on this visual, and I think that speaks that it looks nice and it's a good opportunity for affordability.
Thank you, Trustee Daly. Trustee Cannon, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Well, my experience, I got concerned about with the impact fees, tap fees, or whatever you want to call them. Make sure we cover the cost. And make sure, never touch operations with it, but like your approach, like the formula, I think it's well represented here. Keep in mind, there is a slate of other impact fees that the town charges for development, park impact fees and so forth like that. Street drainage, I mean, there's a whole slate of impact fees there. And, it falls under the category of development pays its own way to a large degree. So I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cannon. I would say, I certainly like with the direction that we're going here. I think that the equation that you guys have used to calculate this is extremely straightforward as far as that goes and makes sense. Obviously, the cost of doing business for a lot of these things has in fact increased. So we're going to see a lot of these things increase with the exception of that non-potable one. And frankly, I think I would be hopeful that this would encourage developers going forward to make sure that they're looking at areas for development that have non-potable systems available. So I think that is kind of a key thing here. So I very much like these numbers as far as that goes. Any other comments?
I'm going to make a comment here. As far as the reduced amount for the non-pot, I think that's a fantastic way to go on it. Mainly because the people that are developing the new developments that do have the wells and everything else, they're probably going to be charging extra money for them to be able to maintain their non-pot stuff there. So this will help offset some of that extra cost that new developments are gonna have coming in. So, it's gonna be kind of a give and a take, but at least, you hear about metro districts and some of the other stuff, that's gonna help offset that. So, I think that's gonna be a good thing.
Unfortunately, the Metro District added the other 65 mils to the property tax. We'll probably offset any savings.
Right, but again, it's gonna help offset, so, they can go in there, it's not, it's gonna balance out.
You can't have affordable housing, but you got a Metro District charging on 65 mils.
Hopefully it won't be that much.
No, and plus it's a
They've
deductible.
already alluded, right, that's what it's gonna be.
Okay,
Awesome. Well, if there's no other comments from the board, seeing none, I think we'll go ahead and close up the work session. I appreciate everybody being here tonight for this discussion. Quite a lengthy one, but I think we got it done. So with that, let's take a quick 5-minute recess, and then we'll go ahead and kick off the special meeting. All right, I now call to order the January 2026 Board of Trustees special meeting, time being 8:30 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Ms. Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Wiegand,
here,
trustee Cannon,
Here.
trustee Daly,
Present.
trustee Moyer, trustee Teets, Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Here.
Mayor Shosse. Mayor Pro Tem, you do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. Do we have any amendments to the agenda this evening? We don't really have much of an agenda. Any conflicts of interest with the agenda this evening? Okay. All right, excellent. Public comment. Now is the time for public comment. Members of the public who wish to comment on non-agenda items, please sign in on the sheet behind the podium and state your name clearly into the microphone. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to provide comments. Seeing none. Do I hear a motion to enter? Only agenda item we have this evening is an executive session. Do I hear a motion to enter into executive session?
motion to go into executive session.
And I apologize. Ms. Clerk, can you please read the title for item F1? I apologize.
No, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The formatting was odd on your meeting, guys. I apologize about that. An executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators pursuant to 24-6-402-4E C.R.S. and for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to 24-6-402-4B C.R.S. regarding acquisition of water resources by the town. As required by C.R.S. 24-6-402 2D.5, 2A, and 2E, the executive session proceedings will be electronically recorded and the record will be preserved for 90 days through April 20th, 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. And I apologize. We did have a motion on that. Did I have a second on that as well?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon, Trustee Cannon. Ms. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Wiegand?
Here, yes.
Yes or no?
Thank you. Trustee Cannon?
Yes.
Trustee Daly?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, that motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. For the public, the board is now entering into the executive session. Members of the public in person will be asked to leave, and the Zoom meeting will end for all users with the exception of our water attorney.